In the year 1324, one man gave away so much gold that he accidentally destroyed the economy of an entire region. His empire produced more gold than anywhere on Earth, and almost no one today even knows his name. Forget today's billionaires. This man's wealth was so vast that historians say it is, quite literally, impossible to calculate. So how do you give away a fortune this big and turn an act of pure generosity into a catastrophe that lasted 12 years? By the end of this, you'll understand exactly why. His name was Mansa Musa, ruler of Mali, and the richest human being who has ever lived. This is the story of how too much having become a curse. Mali sat on top of something the rest of the world was desperate for: gold. So much that this single empire may have produced half of all the gold on Earth. And the man who controlled it all answered to no one. Gold wasn't a luxury to him. It was the ground he walked on. Salt, copper, ivory, books, everything flowed through his cities. And then, in 1324, Mansa Musa decided to leave. As a devout Muslim, he set out on the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca. But this was no ordinary journey. This was a moving city of gold. "60,000 people, thousands of servants in Persian silk, 80 camels, each carrying hundreds of pounds of pure gold. Ahead of him, 500 servants, each carrying a staff of solid gold, cleared the path. He didn't travel like a king, he traveled like a god. Everywhere he stopped, he gave gold away, to the poor, to strangers, to anyone who came near. He built a mosque every single Friday of his journey. To him, it was generosity. He had no idea this kindness was about to become a weapon. Because the next city he entered was one of the richest in the world, and he was about to break it. For weeks, Mansa Musa flooded Cairo with gold. He spent it, gave it, lavished it on officials and the poor alike. At first, it was a miracle. Suddenly, everyone in Cairo had gold. Beggars became rich. But here's what nobody understood. When something becomes common, it becomes worthless. And gold had just become very, very common. Prices began to rise, then soared. The gold everyone was so happy to receive now bought less and less. The value of gold across the entire region collapsed. One man's generosity had triggered an economic disaster. Historians estimate his visit cost the region over $1 billion in lost value, and it took 12 years to recover. And the most astonishing part? Mansa Musa had no idea. He left Cairo believing he had blessed the city. He had, in fact, broken it. But the story of the Golden King spread like wildfire, and everyone began asking the same question: where is all this gold coming from? Within decades, European mapmakers drew Mali on their maps, with Mansa Musa at its center, holding a chunk of gold the size of a fist. And he wasn't finished. He was about to build a legend. On his way home, he poured his fortune into a city called Timbuktu and turned it into one of the greatest centers of learning the world had ever seen. Architects, poets, and scholars came from across the Islamic world. Its libraries held hundreds of thousands of manuscripts. Here, knowledge was worth more than gold. He built mosques that still stand 700 years later. He had everything: gold, power, faith, and legacy. And then, the story goes quiet. Mansa Musa died around 1337, and his sons couldn't hold the empire together. Rivalries and invaders chipped it apart. The trade routes shifted, and the greatest empire in Africa began to fade. The libraries were scattered, the cities emptied. While the wealth of European kings filled the history books, the richest man who ever lived was reduced to a footnote. Today, we celebrate billionaires whose fortunes wouldn't even come close, and yet his name barely survives. Which raises the real question: why have you never heard of the richest human in history? The answer says more about us than about him. His story survived only because of three things: a pilgrimage that crossed into other people's records, a fortune so absurd it became a myth, and a lesson the world keeps relearning. Because here's the truth Mansa Musa proved by accident: wealth isn't about how much you have, it's about how rare it is. The moment gold became common, it became worthless, no matter how much he owned. The richest man in history made gold itself worth less just by being generous. His wealth was so vast, it broke the very thing that measured it. He wasn't forgotten because he didn't matter. He was forgotten because the people writing history weren't writing about him. And maybe that's the real lesson. History doesn't remember the richest. It remembers the ones whose story gets told. And one last thing. That pull you felt this whole video, needing to know how rich he was, why you'd never heard of him, how kindness became a catastrophe, that curiosity that kept you here, that's the same force that made the world remember a king for his gold and forget everything else. So next time you hear someone called the richest in the world, ask who'll still remember them in 700 years. There's another fortune even stranger than this one, but that's the next video.